Hello again, everyone, and welcome into the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Thanks for your time again this week. Big show today. Bob Elliston will join us in just a few moments, the Vice President of Racing and Sales at Keeneland. And then from the Daily Racing Forum, the award-winning Jay Privman will be with us. And we'll be talking about the situation in California and around the country. And, of course, Bob Elliston on when, if Keeneland is going to get those summer dates. Last week, we were taping the show in advance, and we didn't know for sure about the Belmont. As most of you know by now, June 20th will be the day, and it will be at 1 1/8 miles. And this is the first time in history that the Belmont will be the first leg of the Triple Crown. Basically, since about 1931 or so, it's been run in the order or close enough to it where the Belmont was always the last leg at 1.5 miles. But it's a great situation, I think, to keep it at 1 1/8 miles. It's like this. Would you rather have no Belmont? Or would you rather have a Belmont? It is really that simple. And at 1.5 miles, no one was going to be bringing their horses to run 1.5 miles this early in the season, coming off races that had been at 1.1 miles. Instead, you're going to have a good field, an exciting field with Baffert and Pletcher in it, and Tiz the Law, Barkley Tag. Pretty much everybody that would have gone to the Derby will be going to the Belmont, I think, or most of them will. And then the Derby will be coming up in September, and the Preakness in October. All right. Hello again, Ben Chaffins on lead guitar.
Hello, Kenny.
Mr. Thomas Kenny, our excellent researcher. You've been looking into this Belmont, Thomas, because while we know it's 1.5 miles, it's not etched in stone that it's always been 1.5 miles.
That's right, Kenny. The first 7 Belmonts were actually 1 mile and 5 furlongs, which is pretty much the longest horse race that I can think of. And they actually took place in the 1800s at a place called Jerome Park.
Yeah, the Bronx. Yeah, I've heard of that.
So the Belmont throughout history has been run at pretty much every conceivable distance. 1.25 miles, 1.1 miles, 1 mile and 3 furlongs, 1.5 miles obviously is the standard. But this year, we're going at 1.1 miles for the first time since, I believe, 1925.
Ooh, yeah, it's been a long time. And as you mentioned there, things have changed over the years. We've gotten very used to the Triple Crown the way it is. But I will point out that, first off, they didn't even know it was a Triple Crown until 1930 when Gallant Fox won all 3 legs. And after Gallant Fox did that, Charles Hatton of the New York Times coined the phrase Triple Crown. But it was after Gallant Fox, Omaha, War Admiral, Whirl Away, Count Fleet, Assault and Citation. After all those won the Triple Crown, somebody finally looked back and said, hey, it's been done before, but before any of these horses did it. It was 1919 Sir Barton. And in 1948, they decided that they would give him credit for winning the first Triple Crown. So things have changed a lot over the years. Some purists I've seen, and they've contacted me, can you believe that they're going to do this distance? Well, again, you want this distance or do you not want a Belmont? It's pretty simple as that. I don't think anybody up on our end is upset. You guys upset with this?
Not at all.
No, I mean, you'd rather have, it's just like concessions. You want to watch a baseball game with no fans, you can still watch it on TV. Yeah, I'd like to see a live baseball game if that can be worked out soon, or an NHL game. If whatever gets back into the flow, I think that's what people want. And they want to see racing at Keeneland, which they did not get to see in April, as they usually do, because obviously of COVID-19, everything was postponed. For essence, canceled, but the Bluegrass Stakes might be coming back. The Ashland Stakes might be coming back in July. When is it going to happen? How's it going to happen? Bob Elliston will join us next to talk about it here on the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back into the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Delighted to have this man with us. I've known him for a long time. In many aspects of the sport. Bob Elliston, well respected throughout the country. He is the Vice President of Racing and Sales at Keeneland. And when we speak of Keeneland, we speak of racing in July, possibly. Keeneland has asked for racing dates. Only 5 days, July 8th through 12th, but they plan on packing a lot in. And Bob Elliston joins us now. Bob, thanks for your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Kenny. Great to speak with you. I missed you seeing you on the road to the Derby, and it's just been a series of disappointments throughout this spring. But man, I got a little sunshine pop up when we worked our deal out with Ellison and sent that note to the Racing Commission to have those 5 days in July.
And so, Bob, it looks like it's a done deal. I mean, is it too early to say done deal for sure?
Well, you don't want to count your chickens before the hatch, and daggone it, I mean, it means so much to us to even run 5 days. I don't want to jinx it, but we do have a deal in principle with Ellis, and we have a scheduled horse racing commission racing dates committee tomorrow, and I am very hopeful and very optimistic that they're going to take this up tomorrow and make a recommendation to the full group to accept this, and the full group of the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission will move as quickly as possible. So I'm not ready to say we're across the wire, but we're inside the 16th pole. That's for daggone sure.
Wow. And, and coming down the stretch of this, Fall Star Weekend, as people know, in October is a huge weekend for Keeneland. But these 5 days and getting races in, like maybe the Bluegrass and the Ashland Stakes would be on the same day, July 11th. I saw one proposal. It's going to be as packed as I think any 5-day meet would ever be packed.
Well, so we wish we could run all 18 stakes from the spring, but that's not possible. We're going to run 10 of those stakes. 4 grade 1s, 4 grade 2s, and 2 grade 3s, which is dynamite. And of course, those grade 1s are the Toyota Bluegrass. The Toyota Bluegrass isn't even one of the grade 1s. It's a grade 2. We're trying to get it back to a grade 1. But we got the Central Bank Ashland, we got the Jenny Wiley, we got the Madison, and we got the Maker's Mark Mile to be the standout on that Friday card as well.
Bob, in some strange way, and certainly what has been the strangest year that most of us will ever go through again, we hope, having the Bluegrass July 11th might turn out to be a bit of a blessing in terms of getting horses in there for that September 5th Kentucky Derby now.
It is absolutely. It's always part of, that last series of preps. You got the Wood on the East Coast, you got the Bluegrass in the mid part of the country, and you got the Santa Anita Derby out west. But, with it all being kind of up in the air, and my goodness, now the Belmont could serve as a nice prep into the Bluegrass. I hope Martin Pans and my friend at Naira hears that. He'll get a kick out of that, I know. But, but they're going 3 weeks prior to us at the Belmont, going a mile and 1/8 now. But there's no question about it, with 100 points on the line for the winner, and horses coming to hand a little later than maybe they would have previously. All we have to do is look back this weekend and think about the possibilities of how would a Derby have been without a kind of talent like Maxfield, who demonstrated what he's capable of last fall at Keeneland, but had to miss the Breeders' Cup, and then he would have missed the regular Derby season. But now, off of that huge effort he made Saturday at Churchill, he's poised to be right in the thick of it with the Baffert charges and the good horse Tis the Law from the East Coast. Man, it's wide open, and it looks like it's going to be a dynamite crop of 3-year-olds.
Yeah, and this might be the year that, one thing, Bob, we don't ever see or see rarely is when horses go through that Triple Crown season, how many 3-year-olds do we see continue on through the summer? Maybe the Haskell, the Jim Dandy, the Travers, a few times against the Oak, but you don't have that many. I think this year people are going to have a chance to see 3-year-olds run all year long.
Well, I got a little vested interest in that too, because there's a little thing called the Breeders' Cup World Championship that's going to be held at Keeneland in that first weekend in November.
I've heard of this, yeah.
Heard of that? I used to work over there, as you know, and we used to do some business together over there. But think about that. That's exactly right. I think about it vividly in 2015, the last time it was hosted at Keeneland. There was a little 3-year-old who did pretty well. His name was American Pharaoh, and he captured America's attention as part of the Triple Crown Series. And then he capped it off with the Grand Slam by winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. We don't always get that, like you noted. And man, it would be super nice to have those 3-year-old stars be around come early November at Keeneland for the Breeders' Cup.
We're talking with Bob Elliston, Vice President of Racing and Sales at Keeneland. And, what was the whole situation like? I imagine it had to be excruciating for everyone when they said, we're not going to run the April meet. We just cannot do it. Were they even close at all to trying to work out something, Bob?
Well, you have to remember, we were so March 15th, our barn area opened. And so we had horses shipping in to start on April the 2nd. Well, think about that time. That's when everything was hitting. That's when we were getting a better understanding, if not a full understanding, because quite honestly, week by week, we get more added to that full understanding of what's transpiring with this virus. But it was hitting us right then, and we actually made an announcement, if you recall, that we were going to run the first 2 weeks spectator free and the last 2 weeks with our spectators returning. So that's how rapidly it went from trying to make an accommodation for half the race meet to then we considered spectators without spectators entirely. And then what we realized very rapidly was there's just simply no way to put people in harm's way. And we didn't have the plans at that time to ensure their health and safety because we really didn't know what we were dealing with. Now we do. Now we can come back, unfortunately, without spectators in July. But hopefully it will be a situation where come the October race meet, we find ourselves with the ability to have our fans who love Keeneland, who have this incredible love affair with it, that they could return to the race in October. But yeah, it was day by day, Kenny, things were changing.
Yeah, and still to this time, people are waiting to see what happens. I'm glad to hear you say, not making the definitive statement, but there is the possibility that fans would be able to come back in October, because I try to spin it. I'm hoping everybody tries to spin positive in everything, Bob, and give hope that maybe things will change a little bit and we can get back to having live sporting events for fans maybe by the fall.
I think it's irresponsible for us to run out into the street today and just say, the heck with all this. Let's just return to normal. We all know that's not the right way to go about this. But with proper protocols, with more knowledge that we have, and keep our fingers crossed if the medical community can make advancements like they're making on treatments and vaccines, and we can get back to some semblance of normalcy, or an experience that lets them on there, but with few sacrifices, if that's masks or whatever bit, that become the hot button issue, with people out there. But daggone, I mean, to be able to go out there and be nearby, but not right on top of our friends, 37,000 people at Keeneland, a little tough. But if you could get some number of folks there that could properly be distanced and be respectful of other people around them with distancing and masks and things like that, it would mean so much for folks to be able to get outdoors and enjoy something that they love, like a day at Keeneland.
We'll be back with more with Bob Elliston from Keeneland right after this. Stay with us. This is the Horse Racing Show. And welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Glad that you're with us. Delighted to have an old friend of mine, Bob Elliston, who is the Vice President of Racing and Sales at Keeneland, with some great insight about the Keeneland meet that's on the table. Looks like everything's going to happen in July. It'll be 5 great racing days. It will be spectator free, as almost everything in sports is these days. Just getting back to it. But Bob, looking ahead now, and everybody, again, trying to be optimistic. Are you working on contingency plans already for the Breeders' Cup, the first part of November at Keeneland?
Yeah, actually, we've been working on contingency plans if we were able to go racing in July. We also have something that our September sales, the yearling sales. Think about that, Kenny. All these stars that we see, so many of them are sold at Keeneland for those 2 weeks in the middle of September. We've got to find ways to get those horses on the grounds, have the world come here to inspect them and bid on them, because that's a $375 million marketplace that we're working. And again, working contingency plans on every facet of what we may encounter at that time. And that's extending to our October race meet, and most certainly the Breeders' Cup World Championship. We have multiple meetings a week with the Breeders' Cup, who's in charge of that. That's their event, and they hold it with the host track like us. But we have such a tremendous partnership with the Breeders' Cup that there are active conversations all the time, trying to anticipate whatever environment we're facing. We're going to find a way to showcase the best racing we can to as many people as we can. But at its core, as we discussed earlier, it's got to be safe, and it's got to be with a perspective that is respectful of people's lives and what they have going on and their comfort level. And we're not letting any rock just sit there. We're turning them all upside down to figure out what we could possibly do.
And as the vice president of racing and sales, I was going to ask you about the sales. Racing, we can watch it on TV. We can go to the accounts. We can go to Keeneland, the website. We can make bets and watch the races. From a sales standpoint, I imagine most people want to be there and actually see these horses, Bob, not just a video of them when they're going in and we're talking about millions of dollars on the table.
Well, that is no doubt the case, and you do what you can within the environment that you expect you will face to allow that to happen. And so I can tell you, I've got a meeting this afternoon where we're bringing in a series of consigners and the folks who sell the horses, and we're doing walkthroughs on the grounds, properly distanced with our masks, but anticipating what things we might have to put in place to secure it, to make sure that you don't have too many people concentrated in an area. How are you going to deal with the pavilion itself in terms of the density of population in there to conduct the auction? And all of this is intended to put the protocols in place, Kenny, so we can get as many people on the grounds who need to be there to see the horse and then spend that like $8.2 million that was spent for the half sister to Beholder last year.
Right.
People, you pay that kind of money, you'd like to see it, right? I don't order diamond rings over the internet, right? I don't order diamond rings anyway. But even a nice pair of shoes, I'm reluctant to order over the internet. I want to see them.
Right.
I can't imagine buying a $2 million yearling without seeing them. But we're trying to find ways to make that happen.
This is such a time that, again, we talk about fluid situation. Everything is so fluid. I can imagine. I can't even really imagine some of the meetings you have to sit in because I don't know what anyone can say definitive. And this is a weird period of time, and maybe the only period of time it's really hard to say what's right and what's wrong, isn't it? Because everything changes so quickly.
We have a document that is literally 5 columns, and the first column is no sale at all, and the last column is completely normal sale. Now we have things underneath each of those, but they're really irrelevant because I don't believe we're going to be no sale. I think we will. I feel very certain we will sell horses, but I don't think we're going to be completely normal at the other end. So I've got 3 different columns that are degrees of different protocols that we have to anticipate. You're exactly right, Kenny. And the good news is we're very open with our customers, the buyers and the sellers, to have them engage with us to develop those protocols. And then we will be open and communicative of the folks who have to be involved in it so that they know what they can anticipate when they come on the grounds. But as importantly, they feel confident we're doing whatever is possible to keep them safe. That is critical to have folks with the confidence that the procedures that are in place, they can count on them. They can come here. They can do their business. They can return to their lives wherever they're from, and nothing that we can control is bad going to happen to them while they're here.
I imagine that everybody in the industry had to be thrilled with the opening of Churchill Downs and seeing the numbers that were put up in a spectator-free environment. The people that are still making the bets on it and the people tuning in to watch these races. And again, it's a country that's hungry for live sports, and horse racing is really at the forefront of all this live sports.
Yeah, no question. You can go all the way back. The Fauner Parks and the Will Rogers Downs, tracks that aren't always front and center on the racing community's must watches on ADW betting and things like that, they were doing well. And then we started getting some of the premier signals back online with Churchill Downs coming back and Santa Anita coming back. And you saw what the handle numbers that rose significantly. You're exactly right. People are looking for action. They're looking for live racing. They're looking for live sports, period. I don't know how much the Keeneland signal is typically the dominant signal when we run. But we will be running at a period when more tracks will come online. For example, New York isn't back up running yet. It will be online. Chicago, Arlington Park hasn't been running. Indiana Downs hasn't been running. So we're going to see more signals come online. But the good news is, I think if we can find silver linings and dark clouds, and we try to do this a lot in this time frame, is I think the sport has been introduced to a new group of people, or a group that maybe moved away and came back, and that's the sports wagering folks. And as they don't have a baseball game, an NBA game, or a college football game going on right now, they're finding the action and they're excited about it, and that's why I think it's grown and hopefully will continue to grow.
Bob, it's been great to catch up, and congratulations to you and everyone at Keeneland. You had to make some tough calls in the spring, and looks like a bounce back now for July racing in the summer, and hopefully the sales go off as planned as well.
Well, you're a great friend of the racing community, great friend of Keeneland and Lexington. Kenny, we love you. We'll look forward to seeing you this fall again in person. All right, take care of yourself.
All right. Thank you, Bob Ellison, Vice President of Racing and Sales at Keeneland. What a great job they do. And that's not because I consider it my home track. Around the country, they agree on that. A guy I bet who also agrees on it is Jay Privman. He joins us next when we come back on the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice, and thanks again for your time this week. A dear friend of mine for many years, and a rare 3-time guest appearance now on this show. He is the multiple award-winning writer for the Daily Racing Form. He is Jay Privman, joining us, I think, from Carlsbad, his home, or somewhere out in Southern California. Hello, Jay.
Hello, Kenny, and yes, it's good to be with you, and yes, at home in Carlsbad, California.
So what's all this been like for you? All my friends in the media, we're all kind of in the same boat, watch stuff on TV, don't get to see too much in person right now.
No, not at all. It's been really strange, and I've worked from home for the last 2 months. There's been no media allowed at Santa Anita, so it's been challenging to cover the races from there. It's been obviously all either via telephone for interviews and then watching the races on television or on the computer, and it's a challenging way to do the job because, as you well know, being there and seeing people in person and just running into people is how you find out a lot of the news that you're going to end up reporting. So it's definitely a much more difficult way to do things, and not ideal. But look, we've all had to make significant adjustments to our lives, and so the fact that I can at least continue to work, albeit not from an ideal situation, but at least continue to work, is something that I'm very gratified over. So I'm trying to look on the half glass full aspect of it than not.
And Jay, another good thing is horse racing has continued on throughout this. I don't know if they've marketed themselves that well over this period of time, but you look back and they were racing in Florida and they're racing in Arkansas. Suddenly Will Rogers becomes like, the hottest track in America for a few days. I think it's been kind of fun to at least see this, and Churchill Downs getting back into it, Santa Anita getting back into it. So that's been kind of the outlet for sports fans. Except for watching Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, and it's been kind of the outlet for us all, is horse racing during this time.
Very much so. It's been the one sport that's continued. As you mentioned, there have even been some smaller tracks who really became much more prominent and got a lot more exposure when some of the major tracks had to stand down for a while. There was no Keeneland this spring. Churchill got started later than scheduled. Santa Anita had to shut down for a month and a half, and New York still isn't up and running after having to suspend operations there a couple of months ago. And that allowed some of these smaller tracks like Will Rogers or Fauner Park to have their day in the sun. But it's nice that some of the bigger tracks are now coming back online. Santa Anita's been back up and running for a couple of weeks, as has Churchill Downs. And one thing, Kenny, that I think the racing has done is really show perhaps what it's going to be like going forward for other sports in this new era that we're in of being socially distancing and being responsible for others in terms of making people wear masks and things of that nature, and to not have fans in the stands initially, but to still be able to continue operations. And I think it's kind of a template for maybe how the first step towards how you move forward. And then hopefully there'll be more opportunities for fans to start being able to attend and others once it becomes safer. But at least there's a way forward right now, and that's encouraging.
And, you know, that is a big part of it, I think, is just having the hope. We talked to Bob Elliston earlier. You know, of course, the hope with Keeneland going to have racing in July is, you know, maybe have a fall meet where maybe, yeah, that's the thing, Jay. Nobody can say a definite, but maybe have some fans for October. And certainly they're hoping, you know, for the Breeders' Cup to be able to have some fans or all fans or whatever the case might be.
Right. I mean, that's certainly the hope, is that as time goes on and hopefully things improve, that there's steps that you can take for people to be there, not only at the track, but in other sports that hopefully are going to be coming back online in the near future as well. You've got to take it incrementally, but obviously one of the real joys of being at a live sporting event is the crowd reaction, whether it's a horse race or a football game or basketball game. It's a completely different experience, I think, if you watch it on TV and there's nobody there than actually being there and being a part of it. And that's what we all want to get back to, but we're just going to have to be patient and I think trust the science and do this in a logical manner. And then hopefully we can get there and get back to where we want to be sooner rather than have some hiccups that force us to take steps back.
You know, one thing I'm glad is like when Churchill Downs made the announcement, it's going to be basically the first Saturday in September now. That's what to shoot for. At least they took a stand and they had hope. And now everybody else is kind of falling in line. We know when the Belmont's going to be. We know when the Preakness is going to be. I've had to laugh at even some of my friends, these purists that go, oh, no, the Belmont's a mile and 8. Oh, life as we know it's over. This is the worst thing possible. And, you know, now the Triple Crown will be tainted. Wait a minute. First off, in the way I look at it, here's the options. Belmont or no Belmont. You know, make a concession and have the race or just don't have it. I don't see any other way that anybody was going to run a good horse at a mile and a half right now.
Exactly. As we were just saying, there have been so many tracks that had to suspend operations. So I think it would have been naive for people to think that a significant number of horses would be ready to run a mile and a half in June. It's just not going to happen. And then the other argument would have been, well, maybe you should run the Belmont Stakes after the Preakness in the fall, but that means it would be encroaching upon the Breeders' Cup Classic. And I dare say that other than a horse going for the Triple Crown in the Belmont, I don't know who else would have been interested in running in the Belmont a week or two before the Breeders' Cup at Keeneland. Unfortunately, this year, everybody's had to make the least bad decision. You've got to look at all the potential options. None of them are ideal, but you have to make the one that causes the least amount of disruption. And I think what Churchill Downs did was try and find a date in the future where there was the better potential for there to be a crowd rather than run it without fans earlier in the year. Once that happened, then it was up to Maryland to decide what to do with the Preakness. And in fact, they're not even running yet, so they couldn't have had the Preakness when they normally would have wanted to. So they wanted to have it after the Derby. And then once that happened, as you mentioned, NYRA was faced with the dilemma of, well, where to put the Belmont. And it had to, I think, because of what had previously happened with the other two races, it had to be earlier. And because there had been no racing to get horses ready for a longer race, it had to be at a shorter distance. And I think a mile and an eighth made sense. You know, Kenny, historically, there were two runnings of the Belmont at 1.125 miles. It happened in the 1890s, but it's not an unprecedented situation. And look, everything this year is going to have an asterisk next to it. But like you said, at least they made the attempt and the good faith effort to have the race, because they could have just blown it off, and that would have been a worse option, in my opinion.
We're talking with Jay Privman of the Daily Racing Form. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the horses that are just having great seasons and some that's kind of got maybe a second chance because of all the delays. That when we come right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Our friend Jay Privman is with us from the Daily Racing Form, who's won many, many awards, including, I think, 6 or 7 times the Red Smith Award, which is given to the best story, the best written story about the Kentucky Derby. And speaking of that, Jay, even though it's a long way off September, you see a horse like Maxfield, who won very impressively the Matt Winn, which became now a Derby prep race. A horse that we wouldn't be talking about if the Derby had been the traditional first week of May.
Right. I mean, he's one of several horses, but he's probably the most prominent one who's going to get a chance to run in the Derby because of the postponement of the race. He was one of the better 2-year-olds last year in the country. Missed the Breeders' Cup because he had a small ankle chip that needed to be removed arthroscopically. And by the time he got back into training earlier this year, he really was kind of running out of time to have proper preparation for the originally scheduled date of the Kentucky Derby on May the 2nd. But with the postponement, his connections now have a chance to give him a proper foundation for the race. And the way he won the Matt Winn the other day, he certainly looks like he's come back as good or better as he was at 2. And he's obviously one of the leading contenders for the Derby right now.
You know, and what I like is, you got guys that are, right there and not backing off. Okay, we're still making plans. I remember talking to Jack Knowlton back, Tis the Law. He said, if there's any Belmont running, we plan on running it. This was like 2 months ago. So, I mean, the people that have a good 3-year-old, they know that they're still getting a shot at races and Triple Crown races. And that's been very important, I think, for the whole sport.
Very much so. Even though we look at a lot of these races, like the Santa Anita Derby, for instance, or the Bluegrass Stakes, which was going to be run in April, and now it looks like it'll get run in July. We look at those races oftentimes as just quote unquote prep races for the Kentucky Derby, but they stand alone as significant races, both from a purse value, from residual value for horses who win it, for their potential stallion careers. So those races are significant in and of themselves. They're not just means to an end for getting to the Kentucky Derby. And to your point regarding the Belmont, I think the fact that it is at 1.125 miles makes it more appealing. And Tis the Law has continued to train very strongly since his Florida Derby win. And now he's able to go up to New York, which is where he was born. He's a New York bred. And I think it'll be a pretty neat homecoming for him to be able to run in the Belmont Stakes on June the 20th.
And this is a season, again, where you got, we're saying, and you wrote, I saw on your tweet about Raging Bull, his win, just talking about great horse racing performances that we're seeing right now.
Right. Well, because a lot of these tracks had to suspend operations for a while, and especially Keeneland, a lot of horsemen who had targeted Keeneland for their first starts of the year for some of their top grass horses, like in races like the Makers 46 Mile or things like that, they had to sit on their horses for a little bit longer. So in the specific case of Raging Bull, he was ready to go more than a month ago, but there really wasn't a proper opportunity, a grade 1 mile grass race for him anywhere in the country until the Shoemaker Mile on Memorial Day at Santa Anita. And he shipped out, and in his first start of the year, he won it very impressively. And I think you're going to start seeing, especially for his trainer, Chad Brown, who had a lot of horses ready to go for the Keeneland meet and just needed to wait on them. I think you're going to start seeing a guy who might have had a slower first quarter of the year than normal, but because of the circumstances, there was really no other option for him. I think you're going to see him start to come back and in a big way in the coming months.
What's going on now with California, the situation out there as far as Glad to see Santa Anita back up and running, spectatorless like everybody else, but at least up and running. Is it a situation in California where people, with everything else going on, you don't hear, you're probably not having a lot of protests out there, I'm guessing, right now in front of the park.
No, I don't believe so. I haven't heard of anything like that. Santa Anita's had a very good safety record this year, which I think is certainly helpful. But fortunately, most of the focus has been on the sport itself. There's been really good racing there. I think people are glad to have racing back. It keeps people employed, and I think, as we were saying earlier, Santa Anita and some of these other tracks have shown how you can operate in a safe manner, even under the unprecedented situation that we're in right now.
And, I know, for like Churchill Downs, it was one of the strangest things. I was up there, what would have been Derby Day, Jay, and I walk on the backside and there's no horses. I'd never been up there when the barn's totally empty. Yeah, I know it's empty over the winter and when they come back, but to go on that big backside over there, how massive it is, and there's nobody there. That was a really strange experience.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I remember watching you on TV that day. It's just such a strange situation that we're in. We kind of set our internal clocks by the racing schedule each year. We know we're going to be at Churchill Downs on the first Saturday in May, and 2 weeks later we'll be at the Preakness in Baltimore, and 3 weeks after that we'll be at the Belmont Stakes, and then come the summer meets at Del Mar and Saratoga. And it looks like Del Mar and Saratoga are going to be fine in terms of racing, but even those tracks don't know quite yet whether they're going to be allowed to have spectators. But there's been just so much turmoil this year, and I think with all that's gone on, I think racing's done a pretty good job of trying to navigate these. There's no roadmap on how to do this, and I think they've really done a good job on trying to get through this as best they can.
With the way things have shaped up now with the Triple Crown, and which will officially start in June 20th with the Belmont, and things like the Bluegrass Stakes that it looks like going to be run in July. One of the things, Jay, is with horse racing is usually after that grueling Triple Crown, you don't have that many. You have some of the star 3-year-olds, very few of them that are going on to a summer campaign to the older horses. To the Breeders' Cup. That might be a little different this year with it spread out this way.
You're right. It's going to be really interesting to see how these horses are campaigned. I think there's a few that are getting a little bit of a break right now that maybe gleaned enough points early on in the year where they can be freshened and then come back later in the year and maybe have one or two prep races before the Derby, maybe in July and August, and in anticipation of a first Saturday in September Kentucky Derby. And then you would think, because the Derby is being run so late in the year compared to usual, they'll just go right on with it towards the Breeders' Cup. So I think you're right. There's going to be different kinds of campaigns this year from what we're used to with horses who go down the Triple Crown Trail.
And it's, I imagine it's, in some ways, though, it's tougher for you to keep up with the top 3-year-olds. Like I vote in that poll each week. I'm going, well, okay, I got to wait to Maxfield moved up after the win. He was in there, but I moved him up. How do you gauge anybody right now to the next race? And who knows when the next race is going to be? Obviously, the Belmont coming up, but who knows what's going to happen then for a real 3-year-old test?
Yeah, that's one thing we try to do with the Derby Watch top 20 that I do with the Racing Forum with Marty McGee. We try and touch base with the trainers of the horses we have on the list, but obviously there's a longer horizon this year. We're looking at a race that's been postponed by 4 months, and it is a little tougher to keep track of them because, like you were just saying a few moments ago, there's horses that are going to have different kinds of campaigns. I'll give you one example. Modernist, who was a winner of a division of the Risen Star at Fairgrounds earlier this year. He hasn't run in a couple of months since he finished third in the Louisiana Derby, and there's been nothing that he's needed to be in between now and then. But his trainer, Bill Mott, is looking at the Belmont Stakes as a possibility for him to go. But even running there, it's still another 2.5 months to the Kentucky Derby. Well, we made the decision. We thought we're going to still do our traditional Derby updated list each week because I don't think it matters when they run the Kentucky Derby. It's still the race everybody's most interested in. It's still the race that everybody who's in the sport most wants to win. And we're trying to keep all of our readers updated on the latest goings-ons with that group of horses.
As you do so well time and again, my friend. That's just what you do.
Well, I try and follow your lead.
Hey, hockey, we're going to have a hockey season? June, they're going to drop a puck again somewhere?
I hope so. It sounds like, from what I've read, that they're trying to do something similar to what the NBA's proposed, which is to have all the teams in a couple of spots and just play games in front of with no fans, but to still try and salvage a season, especially a playoffs, and in the case of of hockey, to the Stanley Cup. Is as you know, I'm a huge fan, and I'd love to see it happen. Even though the team that I'm a fan of, the Kings, have been terrible this year, I'm really I'm hoping for. I'd like to see it play out and crown a champion, because the players, the teams that have done well this year, it'd really be unfortunate if they weren't able to decide who was best for this year. And like everything else, you're just hoping they can get back and do it and finish it out, just like racing's been able to try and get back and hopefully finish it out.
Jay, it's been great catching up. We must do this again soon, and I look forward to finally seeing you in person soon, my friend. Thank you.
Kenny, it's always good being with you. It's always a joy, and I appreciate it. You've been a good friend for a number of years, and anytime you need me, I'm here.
Thank you. Jay Privman of the Daily Racing Form. Stay with us. More on the Horse Racing Show after this. Welcome back in. A few moments to go here on this edition of the Horse Racing Show. What episode is this, Ben Chaffins?
This is episode 69.
Wow, I thought so. That means 70s next week. Wow, who knew? So if you want to listen to any of the 68 previous episodes, you can do that by going to YouTube. Is that correct?
That's correct, Kenny. All our episodes are on our YouTube channel at The Horse Racing Show. And you can also find us back on all our podcast versions on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio also. We're on all the major outlets. And then, of course, in Louisville and Lexington Radio as well.
All right. So we hope maybe if you want to go back and listen to some of the past, because we have a lot of moments in there. Of course, a little bit of a history capsule, some of the guys we've been able to talk to, and it's been a real treat. Thomas, Kenny, we've learned several things this year, mostly how to adapt. And I think that's been the biggest thing horse racing's done in showing a lot of the other sports how to do it, is how they adapt.
I would agree, Kenny. Whether it comes to how they handle no spectators or, taking care of their athletes, both, human and animal. I think horse racing's done a lot of things right during this whole quarantine situation.
I heard the other day someone was doing a news report and they said NASCAR's back, which it is. And they said it's the first major sport to get back into action without fans. And I thought, see, horse racing doesn't always get credit. Not that maybe they need to kick themselves in the butt a few times and help promote themselves just a little bit more. But, horse racing was there before anybody else. And actually then the UFC and then NASCAR, if we're keeping score. I think we got them all in, didn't we, guys? I keep missing the Swedish trotters. I keep missing the harness racing over in Sweden. Sorry about that. I know you and Ben like that stuff.
That's right, Kenny.
Yeah, I know that. And by the way, if people want to know, Fauner Park is in Grand Island, Nebraska, and Will Rogers Downs, which I have been to, is just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And yes, they were there when some of the big boys weren't running. So we've mentioned them sometimes. Our guest has mentioned them. And just in case for those out there that did not know, I thought I'd mention that. And Fauner and Will Rogers, they came through in a big way for people when they wanted to watch some horse racing live. They were the main players there for a little bit. And they really did a good job of running everything, and people were tuning in and watching. And that, again, shows stepping up in the clutch, which is what it is all about. All right, so now we got the Belmont, we got the Derby, we got the Preakness in place. We'll talk more next week about some of the horses to keep looking for on this new Triple Crown Trail. Thank you, Thomas Kenny. Always a great job. Thank you, Ben Chaffins. Thank you out there for tuning in. Thanks, Bob Elliston. Thanks, Jay Privman, for being on with us. Until we talk again next week, I'm Kenny Rice. Take care, everyone.